Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Haunted Dolls and Curses video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's wrap up this series for this go around. I'm going to do this last video here, give this series a rest, and then start focusing on another one soon. Thank you so much everyone for your suggestions. If you didn't see it here, I may do one in the future, so be on the lookout for that soon. This one has to do with an actual cursed building. It's a building that apparently houses not only the rich and the famous, and has done so for a good while, but it also houses some curses, some items, in other words, that are haunted, some ghosts that apparently reside there to this day, and overall it just has an eerie presence associated to it. I love this type of stuff because the idea that maybe something is actually living, like a building is actually living in of itself, reminds me of Silent Hill, especially when it comes to Silent Hill 2 and some of the apartments that almost seem to be living on their own. But it has to do with this. You're looking at a picture of it now. It goes by one single name, and it's known as the Dakota. So let's go ahead and let's talk about all the fascinating info associated with this apparently cursed building. So here's essentially what happened. This is a very, very old building, by the way. It was constructed starting in October 25th, 1880. If you could believe that. In fact, you're looking at some of the older pictures here. The way it was constructed, it was very much by itself at that time. It was so remote, in fact. The reason why it was called the Dakota was because people were stating it was so far away from the city, they might as well have built it in the Dakotas. Interesting now, right? Because when you look at that location to this day, it's going to be wall to wall, inch to inch, just buildings surrounding it. But back then, it was pretty much by itself. It reminded me of that other well-known haunted area, the Stanley Hotel, how eerie it looks by itself on a hilltop just on its own. Such is the case here with this Dakota building back then, whenever it too was by itself. But ever since then, it was inhabited and pretty much by a lot of the rich people throughout New York and then other places that would move there. And then cut towards the 1900s, 1950s and onwards, there was a who's who of celebrities that ended up living there. Possibly the most famous one, of course, is John Lennon. He lived there during his lifetime and unfortunately ended up getting killed outside of that very building in of itself. That's why there's the notion that this place could be cursed, because here you have a location that's considered very wealthy. It's obviously like an area that has supposed to have like a lot of safety and security with that wealth, and yet here he was essentially doomed to die right outside that building on that fateful day. But yet other people have lived there as well, or even live there to this very day. Billy Joel was one that I saw. Rosie O'Donnell was another one that I saw. Jack Palance was another actor that was there as well. There was other actors too, like Harley Baldwin, if I'm not mistaken. Oh no, I'm sorry, that was a developer. Leonard Bernstein, who is a famous composer, lives there as well. Connie Chung, a famous newscaster, and so on and so on. I was reading more information on it too. Apparently the application process is very rigorous. Even though you may have wealth, you may have celebrity status, you still have to go through what's called there the co-op. And that involves reams of paper of applications and financial documents and who knows what else. And they have to approve it. And they have turned away some very notable names, including Madonna and others. The idea is you have to be there. You have to abide by certain rules. Otherwise, you can get easily kicked out. But yeah, that's at least some of the history associated with the Dakota. But let's go ahead and let's talk about the infamous stuff associated with it. The almost cursed supernatural things. Pretty much ever since its construction, there have been known hauntings and other type of energy that's within that building. In fact, there was renovations that were happening, and apparently in the 60s, a construction worker saw what he described as a weird apparition. It's pretty freaky when you think about it. It would look like it was the body of a man, but the face of a young boy. I mean, imagine how stark, unsettling that would be if you see something like that walking across. And then also they noticed that there was always this sensation of being watched. Residents there have said they heard things knocking, they've seen things move. The basement there, in fact, is infamous for that. In fact, I was reading one situation where some resident took another person over down to the basements to show that off, to show and say proof and say, hey, here's where this thing, whatever is down there, seems to move a lot of objects. And sure enough, when that happened, not only did it move an object, but it was almost like it was aiming it straight at that person, almost like a projectile, like if you were to throw a knife at someone. And so when that happened, they quickly ran out and then got the hell out of there. And then other things that have happened was rugs have been moved, furniture has been moved. Again, there was the knocks I was mentioning, lights going on and off, people seeing things up in the windows when obviously people aren't there as well. Believe it or not, there is still areas there that are unrented, if you could even call it that. There's just time, again, that it takes to have someone move in and get through the application process. People will see that kind of stuff happen. And then also on the rooftop, there's the notion that people see UFOs. Apparently, for whatever reason, this location seems to have a gateway or something else, a link to UFOs, because also John Lennon himself has stated that he has seen, at that time when he was living, he saw a UFO outside one of the windows. In fact, apparently, if you're able to get into the Dakota, you may have a chance of seeing John Lennon himself. His ghost roams some of those hallways in his traditional white suit, his famous white suit that he featured in some of his videos. And not only that, but he walks up to people, talks to them in a very distinctive John Lennon voice, and that tends to tell people that that's him. That's basically who they're dealing with right there. But yeah, some of the information out there is just pretty amazing. It was also apparently the setting for Rosemary's Baby. Someone might have to fill me in more information when it comes to that, because I would love to hear how it inspired that. Like, was there something demonic, or was there something else that was happening within that area there too? And then also, I was going back to the rooftop. There's apparently the notion that it's housing, or did house, as far as the devil himself. People would see in the snow hooves out there in the top of that rooftop. Again, nobody else would be able to get to it unless you were truly a resident there. And yet that's where they saw and heard what looked like there were these hooves that were going across the top of that location. And when they did so, that's when they saw it afterward there. Interesting stuff. You would think, again, a building like this, as wealthy as it is, and housing so many people that are influential and so on, none of them are pretty much exempt from this kind of stuff. Everyone that lives there, even to this day, go through this type of cycle where they see these things and then probably, keep it to themselves, considering how little you tend to hear of it. But otherwise, people have reported that happening over the years, ever since its construction. I would love to be able to have gone seen it. I was in New York about 4 years ago. I'd love to have gone seen it, but where I was located, I think it was somewhere around 29th Street. This location being 72nd Street, it would have been way north of my location, so there would have been no chance for me to be able to have seen it. But still, maybe sometime in the future, I'd love to do so. But that's pretty much it. That's all the information associated with this building. Apparently, when it was built, wherever it was built, again, in its old location, like in other words, when it was first built, when it was just in an isolated area, something must have been there that caused these type of curses and other type of hauntings and so on to be able to accumulate throughout the years, culminating, of course, in the most tragic one, the most famous one of all, with the death of John Lennon. But yeah, something must have happened at that location, and ever since then, people just continue to just experience this type of stuff. Fascinating stuff too. If anybody has any more info, anything else I might have missed, then please post those comments below. What about those of you that have been able to visit the Dakota and seen the apartments up close and personal? Let me know if you have an eerie feeling of sorts, something else that stands out of the usual whenever you go see it. I'm pretty sure that people still visit, obviously, this day, to go visit the tragic area where John Lennon was shot. So I'm wondering if they still feel something in terms of a sensation there. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care.